Thanks very much for that. And that was our look at the film that's out in the United States, The Secret of Oz, by Bill Still. The anniversary of the death of Pat Finucane, a human rights lawyer who was murdered in 1989, continues to provide speculation over alleged collusion by the British Special Forces with loyalist paramilitaries. The Finucane family solicitors want an inquiry into the murder, but reject an inquiry under the new Inquiries Act 2005, saying that will not allow full public scrutiny. The Controversial Inquiries Act has been declared, this is one that from 2005, has been declared as inadequate by many existing judges and legal authorities. Well, I have with me in the studio an ex-member of the Parachute Regiment who served in Northern Ireland and in the Falklands War, you may have heard from a few weeks ago. Currently he's studying LLB Law, a student with the Open University. Well, welcome to the studio, Richard Cowley.
Thanks very much.
Tell us, first of all, what is a terrorist?
Well, that's the basic of the interview. You know, what exactly is a terrorist? I mean, in conjunction with this title here, Pat Finucane was first and foremost said to be a civil rights and a human rights lawyer, and he started off his career like that by establishing a company in Belfast about 1978 with his friend Madden. And up until about, I'd say about 1972, he was engaged with the NICRA movement, Northern Ireland Civil Rights Association. So he was a civil rights lawyer. As the IRA developed, however, in terms of terrorism, both in Northern Ireland and indeed in Britain, he was then accused, of course, in conjunction with that by the British government, as being too representative of terrorist interests. And so, consequently, I think it was Douglas Hogg, approximately 1 month before Finucane was assassinated, said to the media that he actually commented on Finucane directly, and he said, is this guy, sort of thing, is he too involved with terrorists?
But I mean, you're just saying he's representing terrorists, but actually that was his job, wasn't it? As a lawyer, he's got to represent them. He's got to be quite close to them, and surely that, if what you're saying is true, that he, because he was a lawyer, he was also too closely associated with terrorists, well, no lawyer would ever be able to defend a terrorist in court.
Yeah, I mean, terrorism in itself is a subject we'll obviously isolate and talk about, but just to quickly finish off on the Finucane issue, I think it was Douglas Hogg in particular, the MP, that stimulated his murder, because approximately a month before he was killed, it was Douglas Hogg that brought the issue to the media and said, this guy is too involved with IRA members, and a month later he was killed by the UDA. In conjunction with their interests. And there's been a lot of talk about collusion with the British government, MI5, Special Branch, and in fact every authority that is best invested in Northern Ireland has in some way colluded at some point with paramilitary loyalists, and there's no doubt about that, because in particular John Stevens, with his 3 inquiries up until 2003, has suggested that he believes that MI5 and all these people were colluding with paramilitary illegal groups such as loyalists.
Well, so how do terrorists actually select their targets? Because there are all sorts of things they could be doing. This is hijackings, possibly political targets, property targets, or just sectarian killings.
As you say, there are different forms of terrorism, but what about, firstly, what exactly is a terrorist? Because up until I investigated this in the last week or so, on the internet, with the benefit of that, I didn't really understand what it was to appreciate the word terrorism. And essentially, even with the bombings in London, 7/7, for example, a bus gets blown up or a tube station bomb goes off. Sitting on a bus, even in Bristol, in certain circumstances, can give you the creeps when you know that at any time a bomb can go off. So I don't agree with terrorism either. I think terrorism is the lowest form of warfare or tactic strategy that anybody could stoop to. There's no doubt about that. But in comparison to conventional warfare, typical of, say, the Falklands or any other conventional warfare, terrorism is an unacceptable format. There's no doubt about that. So speaking about the law in conjunction with terrorism, what should the legislation provide specifically to answer that question?
But what about something like a bus bomb, as you were just saying there? How can anyone tell who has planted that or where it's come from? Because, I mean, I've seen stories which suggest that sometimes, even when a bombing is blamed on a suicide bomber, that it actually could simply be a missile fired from a helicopter, because, you know, there's so much devastation on the scene, it's very difficult to tell who's actually detonated a device.
Well, you could go down that road, and that's a very subtle sort of question, but what I'm trying to do is isolate known terrorist incidences. And here in my hand, in front of me just today, I downloaded off the net a considerable amount of evidence. In fact, there was a terrorist occasion on every day of this month, March, and every day of February, and every day of January. And terrorism is...
Are you talking about around the world?
Yes. But of that 2.5 month period, there's been 6 recent terrorist incidences in Belfast and within Northern Ireland, all claimed by the real IRA, as opposed to any other division of the same, you know. But what we're talking about here is not necessarily the very various forms of terrorism. What I'm trying to explain is that terrorism in itself is literally what it says. It terrifies people, causes an unnecessary concern and fear within the City of London, for example. And so why would the government of London, for example, want to give a public inquiry to Pat Finucane's family or solicitors, when the very IRA the chief of staff, I think his name is Sean O'Callaghan, made a public statement when he spoke to The Spectator in 2000. And he said quite clearly there that Pat Finucane, in the IRA's opinion, was not a human rights lawyer. In fact, he was, you know, fairly well advanced in the secret world of terrorism and the IRA.